Hello all you amazing people out there, my name is Huck Stewart. I'm an educator and a learning designer. Today you and I will be talking about online discussions. So to start off, let me see if I can set this scenario for you. You tell me if this sounds familiar. Whether you're a teacher or a student, you're instructed to read something and learn something and then post an initial reply by Wednesday and then comment on 2 other people's replies by Sunday. Does that sound familiar to you? Oh, hang on a second. Hello? Oh, that sounds familiar to you too? Yeah, isn't it kind of boring? It's boring. So I had this idea that I wanted to launch into a video series where each video addresses a new way that we can create or recreate discussions to improve student engagement. This is going to be the first of that video series. In this video, I'm going to cover one discussion type that's unique and different than your traditional discussions in an online setting. And then I'll jump onto a computer and I'll even show you how you might be able to set this up in your own course. So without wasting any time, silence your phones and let's get started. So one discussion method that I love to use all the time as a traditional in-class teacher was card sorting. I would give students multiple vocabulary words or multiple concepts or ideas, usually on little cards or even like little pieces of paper, and then I would put students into groups and ask them to come up with a way to sort the information into categories that make sense. This is what we call an open card sort because there wasn't specific columns that I would provide for them, and there wasn't a right or wrong way to do it. It was more of an exploration of concepts and ideas. So then I challenged them to look at other groups and how they decided to sort those ideas or categories, and then they could have discussions among themselves about whether they think that group was more correct in sorting that particular idea or vocabulary word in that way. It was wonderful to hear and watch students just interact with each other. Now, could we replicate this same idea in an online discussion? Well, this is the challenge we're going to look at today. So I took some time to quickly put together a discussion page. This is in Canvas, but this idea should work in nearly any learning management system. And this is a discussion board where students will be allowed to post and reply to each other. I've got the objectives, which are to categorize different vocabulary words or ideas. And then I will also want students to be able to reflect and defend on the way they sorted their categories. Now, logistically, the instructions are going to be important. There are multiple variations to the way you can choose to do this, and so this doesn't have to be the way I'm showing you, but this is just the idea I came up with. For the initial post, each individual person is going to have to read and understand the vocabulary list or the idea list that you provide for them. You're going to ask the students to consider how they might sort and organize this information into logical categories. We as humans categorize things all the time, so this should feel pretty natural to most students. You can choose to give students a specific number of categories, or you can keep it open and say, sort them in somewhere between 2 to 5 categories, or however you want that to be. But the main idea is that you want them to think about words or ideas that belong together and words and ideas that don't belong together. Then you're going to ask students in their initial post to create columns and show how they decided to sort those. You could ask students to make several posts and each post could represent one of the categories. You could ask students to do this by hand and literally provide for them paper to cut out and sort, and then they could take a picture of it and upload it, or record themselves in a video sorting it the way they do and explaining why they do it. There's a lot of different variations here, but perhaps the easiest way is just for them to type it and put them into columns. Then at a later date, you want students to come back to this discussion and see how other people decided to categorize that information. The hope is that there are a lot of similarities. You might see a lot of students' understanding of certain ideas to belong together. But I would be willing to bet you that if the list was long enough, there would also be discrepancies as to considering words or ideas that belong in one category versus another. And that's where learning is going to take place. Then you're going to challenge these students to post a reply to at least 1, maybe 2 different groups that had sorted things differently. They could ask questions like, why did you sort it this way? They could challenge them and say, well, I sorted it this way and here's why I think you're wrong and I'm right. Or they could jump in and say, wow, the way you sorted it makes a lot more sense to me. I'm deciding to change the way I sorted mine based off of your initial post. All the while, we're encouraging them to reflect and explain why they are thinking the way they're thinking. People that commented on their initial post, maybe they got a challenge and say, well, I think you're wrong and here's why. And then they could, maybe defend that or agree with them. So on this page, I decided to just put the list below, and here is that list. Of course, this is just an example, but this list doesn't have to just be vocabulary words. It could be main ideas or topics from a book. There's a variety of different ideas or things that you can do. But the main idea is to boil those ideas down into small groups that might be able to fit into a single column. Then of course on my page, I always provide instructions as to how they're gonna be graded. I would encourage you to have some kind of rubric attached to this, but I'll let you decide how you're gonna grade this. So if I were a teacher, I would instruct my students to be able to create columns. And if I were a student, this is how it might look. It's gonna look different in each LMS, but in Canvas, a student hits reply, and then it actually gives them a list of rich text editor space up here. And so they're gonna use the table button here. Most LMSs allow students to be able to put tables in. So I'll create the number of columns I feel like it works. Maybe I'll instruct my students to do 4 columns and 2 rows. The top ones could be the title of the category. And then the bottom row could maybe just be the list of words. Now, it may be enough that they just post a list of categories the way they decided to sort it, or you might want students to actually post some sort of explanation below as to how or why they sorted things different ways. Either way works. You could just kind of decide how you want the discussion to go. Once they hit post, it's gonna appear here, and then other students can see the way I sorted things. And then I can also see the way they sorted things. So as a teacher, there's a few things I would recommend. Number 1, be willing to jump in to a discussion, but don't feel obligated to post a reply to every single discussion post. I think a lot of students actually shy away from posting honestly when they know the teacher's gonna jump in and critique everything that they're going to write. Maybe you set a goal to reply to 4 or 5 posts from the entire discussion. Either way, add to the discourse rather than funneling students into thinking that there is one right way to do this. There could be card sort categories that are right and wrong answers, where these ideas or words belong to this specific category and there's no other way to sort that. You could also set it up this way, but it would not provide for as much discussion. That might just be more of like an individual activity for students to do, and then you can check whether they got it right or wrong. Now, I would highly recommend, if you're doing this type of discussion, to do a few things here. Of course, we're gonna allow threaded replies. I think in this case, it would be important to have to post their own ideas before they see other people, because we don't want students to be influenced by the way they're seeing other people sort those ideas. We want them to kind of come up with it on their own. Here's what I feel like is a key to making this be successful. If I have a large class, I would not recommend doing a whole class discussion here. I think it would just be too much. I recommend in this activity to keep it in group sizes of 4 to maybe 6 students. I wouldn't go any larger than 6 students per group. If you put 6 students in a group and they all individually come up with their own card sorts, you're going to have a variety of different ways for students to think about it. Now, are you gonna have a few students who don't post on time or don't post at all? Absolutely, and that's why maybe having a slightly larger group is helpful. So if 1 or 2 students don't really engage in the discussion, you're still gonna have 4 or 5 students posting. So come up with a group name, and I would select maybe 6. And then in this case, it doesn't matter to me. Maybe it matters to you, but I would just automatically let Canvas assign those groups, and then I'll just save that. So that is it. That's our first discussion idea for changing the way we do online discussions and hopefully improving student engagement. Let me know what you think about this, and if you try it out and it goes well, let me know. If it goes poorly, also let me know. I'd like to hear about it. I hope this is helpful for you. I'm gonna be making at least a dozen more videos like this where we dive into different ways of doing discussions in an online setting. If that interests you, consider subscribing. If you found this helpful and you know other teachers who also might find it helpful, give them a call, send them a quick text message with this link of the video, and let them see it as well. Have a great day teaching, and we will see you guys next time. Phones taste good.